Yes, sir. Welcome back to another edition of the Blue Review. That felt really good to get a nice little
you get a
tongue
roll
roll in the
R's there.
morning.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
yeah, a little R roll at 9:30 in the morning. We are joined, of course, by our friend. You can see it below, but I want to give him the proper introduction. D-Mac, Doug McCain of Dodgers Nation and host of Dodgers Dugout. And, I'll go ahead and send the link on Twitter to that because that's a cool way you spell it. But, Doug, how you doing, man? It's so good to see you.
What is up, Greg? What is up, Parker? Glad to be back here on the Blue Review. I know I look like I'm going to manage Shohei Ohtani's mansion, Hawaii. I'm going to manage your islands, but it's laundry day here. But at least it's not the new Pop-Tart Funfetti Dodger City Connect. So happy to be back. Happy to talk some Dodger baseball, baby.
I always love you being on here, and people in the chat are going to love it because I never wear Dodger stuff because, I'm working. So it's not a thing that is really as acceptable for me to do around here. But no, everybody's going to love that, and really appreciate being on here. So, and you also do something else too. You work with Travis Rogers on the Locked On Rams podcast. So let's get that out there too.
My man, Travis Rogers, man, the GOAT. Yeah. Go check us out for the Ramley over on Locked On for sure. Hey, just I think it's 11 Sundays until Detroit. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a big year for your Rams.
11 Sundays. It just keeps getting closer and closer. Jeez. But again, I want to just thank everyone for joining the chat as well. If you're in there, you can send any questions our way. And, Doug and all of us will be happy to answer them. But, of course, before we get into Dodgers talk, I want to remind everyone, Doug and I were talking a little bit about this hat before the show, and he was curious. He said, Parker, where'd you get this hat? And I go, well, LAX, they dropped off some gear. Doug had thought that they just have such cool gear that this was some new designer brand.
He's got to get the yellow vest and the mini lightsabers, and go full LAX air traffic controller.
Yeah, that's what you got to do on.
No, and our friends at LAX, the sponsor here at Blue Review, of course, they're just changing the travel experience, reducing traffic, saving guests time. I'm going to be heading over there not too long, heading out to Iowa. Very interesting, random place to be going to. Caitlin Clark's not even out there anymore. But yes, good for baseball. I'll probably check out Field of Dreams, drive over to Wrigley out in Chicago. So, Blue Review presented by LAX, and we thank LAX. If you want to learn more, check it out at flylax.com/transforminglax. So let's get into this, guys. Let's get straight into this. Dodgers won yesterday. Weird game. Offense was quiet, but thank goodness it's the White Sox. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on last night? Doug, I'll start with you.
I think it really comes down to, Shohei Ohtani, he had a 7-game hitting streak snapped. He went 0 for 3, had 2 strikeouts, did have a walk and a sac fly, and he extended that RBI streak to 8 games. But James Paxton, another quality start for James Paxton. He absolutely imploded against the Pirates a couple weeks ago, and he really was really good. His past 2 starts, 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. You're seeing the punch outs go up. So I think with James Paxton, he's doing exactly what the Dodgers hoped that he would have done in the regular season. That's 8 innings, right? If James Paxton is starting a postseason game for this team, you know that a lot of things went wrong, but he's doing exactly what they'd hoped he would do. And he's been durable. He stayed on the mound. And that's what you want to do. You want to drive him like a rented car in the regular season and then hope that that's what happens. And that's what he's doing. Also, on top of that, you have to mention Miguel Rojas. This Miguel Rojas thing is just out of control.
I love it so much.
23-0. Greg, what do you think about that? 23-0. It's the longest streak ever for a player that's getting a hit in that team winning a game. He's had a hit in 23 games. They've won all of those games. So all I need is 11 games in October where Miguel Rojas gets a hit, and I think this team is going to have a parade and be popping champagne. But what do you think about that, Greg? That's wild, right?
I love it so much. I love the 23-0 streak every time he gets hit. I'm like, yeah, Dodgers are winning. It's over. It's the 4th inning, 0-0 game, and the game's over. Miguel Rojas got a hit. Thankfully, it was against a really bad team in the White Sox. But I just love those types of streaks. It gives you something to be cheering for consistently. And what's up, Marcus? What's going on?
What's going on? Yeah, I got free a little bit early. Figured I'd stop by and join you guys. What's going on, Doug? I was listening to Doug wax poetic about the big maple, and look, the fact that he's continuing to pitch well, and we talked about this yesterday, Greg. When he's not walking guys, he's been great for this team. Yeah, he did. He got away with it. Look, when you're playing the worst offensive team in baseball, you can sort of get away with that sort of thing. But I think generally speaking, when he's not walking guys, it's amazing. Into the Miggy Rowe thing. One, it's amazing that they're undefeated when he gets a hit, and the fact that honestly, one of those games was the 7 runs in the 9th inning against. That's the one that it's one thing when you just win a 5-1 game or whatever, but like to to have that be part of the legacy is what makes that stat so bananas.
And that one too, Doug, it was interesting because it was 9-4 game at that time. So when he got the hit, you were actually nervous that you were going to lose a streak at that point. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that one really kind of a soft base hit. I remember Kirsten Watson mentioned the stat at the time, and all of a sudden the Dodgers, they have their most epic ninth inning comeback in franchise history. You get the grand slam by Hayward, you get the home run by Teoscar Hernandez. And I think yesterday what really stuck out though is when he gets that hit. I mean, he smacked that inside slider from Steven Wilson, goes for a double to left, and it was his first extra base hit for the Dodgers for the entire game. And then Lux, he moved the runner over that pinch hit situation. Then Kike came through. So really, it was a situation where it wasn't a soft or a base hit or a single. He comes in for an extra base hit. He does damage. And look, for this team with Mookie Betts out, I thought, look, this is a team that's going to have to win games, 4-3, 4-2, and you're seeing them still put up a lot of big numbers. Yesterday, though, it was kind of more the offense I expected with Mookie Betts out, winning that game 3-0 behind excellent pitching. Alex Vesey did a great job, like you mentioned. James Paxton, Big Maple getting it done. And I think you're going to see more wins like this when it kind of starts to level out with Ohtani at leadoff, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, in the absence of Mookie Betts.
Yeah. So how much of that do you think was Garrett Crochet too? Because he's actually been having a good year. He's really the only guy on that team that has had a good year. But it's we were talking about it before the show too, that that's a name that's on the Dodgers list. You think they saw something where he basically shut down the Dodgers for most of the game, if not his entire outing? So is that something that now they're going to be like, okay, this is a dude that we kind of want to bring in here?
I absolutely think that they've had their eye on Garrett Crochet because I think that they realize that, one, you can never have enough starting pitching depth, and two, with Yamamoto being out with the injury, you don't have any guarantees he's going to be back or he's going to be back and pitch like the guy he was before he went down. Clayton Kershaw had a little bit of a setback. Walker Buehler hasn't looked like the butane that we saw before the injuries. No guarantees about Dustin May, right? So I think they absolutely need to add another starter, and Garrett Crochet, I think, definitely passed his audition. He ends up going 5 2/3, allowed no runs, had 5 hits, 6 strikeouts, 91 pitches, also got some key double plays out there. And I think that's one thing you see with this Dodgers offense is, yes, you can see them beat up on mediocre pitching all season long, but when it comes to high velo guys, right, guys that get pumped 96, 97, 98, they tend to struggle. And you look at, if you could pair a Garrett Crochet with a Tyler Glasnow as your 1 and 2 in a series behind this offense with Shohei Ohtani, a healthy Mookie Betts, a Freddie Freeman, you got to like your chances in that series. I mean, heading into yesterday's start, Garrett Crochet and Tyler Glasnow, an identical 35.2% strikeout rate that led all of Major League Baseball. So imagine having a high velo punch out guy as a righty and then as a lefty in games 1 and 2. It's extremely enticing.
Doug, when you look at the schedule coming up, right? I mean, they got the White Sox for a couple more games, then an off day, but they get into kind of a more difficult stretch coming up, right? Because they got 3 against the Giants, and I know the record isn't good, but Giants games are, they are what they are. Same with the Diamondbacks. These are teams that know each other. Then after that, they got the Brewers, they've got the Phillies. I won't say are they going to use this to determine if they got to make a move, because I think they know they do. But is this going to be kind of a stretch where they figure out exactly where the holes are and sort of use that to gauge what moves they're making?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting because, as you mentioned, you got some tough teams. You have a lot of consecutive games in a row. And I think if you're this Dodgers team, you look at your lineup right now and you got guys that are playing in spots on everyday roles where they typically be coming off the bench, right? I mean, you got Miguel Rojas now as your everyday shortstop, Kike Hernandez playing third base. I don't know if you truly use their numbers right now to evaluate their role on the team after the deadline. I think they know that they need an outfield bat. I mean, Andy Pages, he has absolutely looked apart as a rookie, but we saw last year, James Outman finishes third in the Rookie of the Year voting. He hits 23 home runs. Then the postseason, lights got a little too bright, right? Could have made that catch that could have really helped Kershaw get out of that nightmarish first inning. Didn't do much at the plate. And then you look at Jason Hayward, has definitely played well since returning, but Chris Taylor is having the worst season of his career. Teoscar Hernandez is the bright spot who absolutely should be starting the All-Star game, in my opinion. But I definitely think they're going to look for another bat to lengthen this lineup, regardless of what we see in the next couple of weeks with this team, because they know that you can't be too top heavy, right? The MV3 can't carry you every single night. You need some more length. And when we see this team struggle Everyone talks about starting pitching in the postseason. It's just because they can't hit, right? It's because they go through these dry spells where you see a lot of strikeouts consecutively in big spots. You struggle with runners in scoring position. So absolutely could see them adding another bat, whether it's in the middle infielder for someone if Bo Bichette becomes available, or they want to swing really big on a Luis Robert Jr., which I'm sure we'll talk about. Randy Arozarena was linked to the Dodgers by Jeff Passan today. So there's definitely going to be some names available, and I expect them to be extremely aggressive because you got to go all in year one with Ohtani.
So, Doug, both those two names you mentioned, both Arozarena and Luis Robert, former, studs. You got both all-stars. You're looking back at that 2020 postseason with Arozarena. How much of this is we're thinking in the past, and these two guys can, bring the Ohtani to the Ohtanis, the Dodgers to where they need to be?
I mean, they kind of are the Ohtanis,
exactly.
Right? Like that's
right. You said the silent part out loud, right? I mean,
how much of that is like, hey, we're thinking in the past, or I know that Rosenthal and those guys were saying if they were to go to a team like the Dodgers, something about that just environment can change their season around. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I think with Randy Arozarena, it's an interesting one because we know that a smart front office like the Dodgers, led by Andrew Friedman, they're not going to make a trade for what players have done in the past. They're going to do it for what they think they can do for them in the future, right? And with Arozarena, I mean, 9 series in the postseason, he has an 1104 OPS, right? So when the postseason rolls around, some guys, they just have that slower heartbeat. They're not afraid of the moment. Randy Rosa has proven to be one of those guys. But you're absolutely right, Parker. I mean, the fact is he's struggled this season. He's hitting 191, not 10 home runs, below average defense. The expected numbers don't love him. But you also mentioned an important thing, too, is a change of scenery, right? I mean, Teoscar Hernandez didn't have a great year with the Mariners. You put him in this offense where he doesn't have to be the guy, and all of a sudden he puts together an all-star season. So I think a change of scenery with Randy Arozarena, he instantly, can you imagine the pavilions if Randy Arozarena is out there? He would instantly go right up there with, right a level behind Ohtani, because Ohtani's probably the most famous guy on the planet, right? But I mean, he's right up there as one of the more popular Dodgers. Dodgers fans have been clamoring for him to be traded here for a long time. He would probably have to smooth things over with Will Smith, and maybe they'd finally do that fist bump that we wanted to see in the WBC. But I like the idea of Randy Arozarena as a change of scenery guy. Only thing is, he has 2 more years of team control after this season. So either it's a situation where the Rays are kind of selling him on a low, and the Dodgers are kind of taking advantage of that, and you don't have to give up the prospect capital that you would have if he was having a really good season, or you kind of get him on a deal where you have to overpay just because of the market right now. But you could also see, too, if you trade for Randy Arozarena, we know what the Dodgers like to do when it comes to trades. They like to get more bang for their buck. Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, throw another guy in there. You get a Pete Fairbanks possibly, and you could add to this bullpen and get a little 2-for-1. But I want to ask you guys, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think the idea of Randy Arozarena is something you would pursue? Because I mean, very polarizing player, but I mean, if he's right, especially in the postseason, he can absolutely carry.
I don't see for me, and Marcus, sorry to take it away. So for me, I think that it would be an interesting piece because we have seen what he can do in the playoffs, like you were talking about. We see that he is an impactful player in the big moments, in the big spots. He's got the speed. He moves around. Like he will do what you need to get done in the postseason. When the other guy you talked about was Luis Robert Jr., I haven't been as high as most other people as on Luis Robert Jr. just because I haven't seen anything out of him this year. And they're kind of in that same situation, down bad years this year on kind of teams that aren't really doing all that hot. So it's which maybe the change of scenery will work there. But I think I would prefer Arozarena because I know what he does in a big situation when the lights are the brightest.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thing. It's like Dodger fans remember Arozarena as the guy who terrified and terrorized them in that World Series. It just seemed like every big situation he was coming to the plate, and there was a fear that not only would he put the ball in play, but he was going to do some damage with it. And so I think that's sort of the lasting memory that we've got of him. I mean, I'm sort of curious because we're talking about adding all these bats, right? And Doug, it feels like it's essentially for one outfield spot because we know Teoscar is going to play. Pages, I think, is pretty much locked in his spot in the outfield. And so that makes it a rotation for, I don't know, Arozarena / Robert / Hayward, / fill in the gap. I mean, it's kind of a one outfield spot that's up for grabs at this point, right?
Yeah, I think what you would do if you were to trade a Luis Robert Jr., who Luis Robert. I can't roll my R's like Parker, but
Yeah.
I think with Luis Robert Jr., you would trade him knowing that he's going to be your center fielder for the rest of this season and the 3 seasons following that. He would be your starting center fielder for this entire run with Ohtani, Freddie, and Betts in Freddie and Betts' prime, right? I mean, that's the kind of player he is. And yes, you're absolutely right, Greg. He hasn't wowed you this season. He did have a stint on the IL this year with a hip flexor. I mean, he's only played more than 100 games twice. Only played 100 games once in his career, so pretty much send his mail to the IL because he's lived there for his career. But the potential is just so off the charts. I mean, this guy, when he's right, I mean, last year, 38 home runs, a 5-WAR season. I mean, when he's right, his ceiling is higher than a Randy Arozarena, and also his defense is superior to Randy Arozarena, and he plays that premium center field position. But you're absolutely correct, though. It's a tough situation because if Pages is technically having a better year than Luis Robert Jr. right now, but I think it just depends on what they vision in Pages for the future, right? Because next year, there's no guarantee that Teoscar Hernandez is going to return, right? He's going to be a free agent after the season. Chris Taylor will be back, but I guarantee they don't see him as some solution in the outfield. So you definitely need some outfielders on this team. Jason Hayward, his success really has come against right-handed pitching. His defense has been really good. So if he's still in right, I think that's okay. But I think that you could possibly see an outfield mix of Jason Hayward in right, Teoscar Hernandez in left, and Luis Robert Jr. in center. And then Andy Pages, maybe you include him in the trade. I mean, or he comes off the bench. But either way, if Pages isn't a part of the trade, he could still be a corner outfielder next year for you when Teoscar Hernandez is gone.
It would hurt my heart to give up Pages right now.
Yeah, that would.
Paz rakes, man. There's no doubt about it. But this team, to me, do you guys think they want to give all the keys to rookies in those big positions? And we saw what happened. That burned them last year with James Outman.
Yeah, I mean, what has Luis Robert done besides be another guy that we've had on? This team is filled with dudes that just live on the IL, and Luis Robert, like you were saying, lives on the IL, is not having that great of a year. I know you're talking about ceilings, but when you have the two of them, for me, if I'm choosing between the two, it just depends on obviously what you're giving up, whether prospects, what it happens to be. Arozarena, we know what we're getting. Robert, we don't, because he hasn't been in the postseason, and he hasn't. I don't think the White Sox have been in the postseason while he's been around. But White Sox hasn't been in the postseason, and he's injury prone. So I don't know. I just don't really feel like I would not be upset with Robert. But if I'm having a choice one way or the other, Arozarena is the guy that kind of makes the most sense to me overall. But let's keep going on and talking about more of these trade situations too, because shortstop is one of those ones. Because going into the postseason with Miggy Rowe at shortstop, as much as I like his defense and he's been hitting the ball very, very well, I don't know if I can trust that when it comes to postseason time. And the two biggest names that have been floating around are Paul DeJong of the White Sox as well. So you can kind of find a way to do Crochet, Robert, and DeJong if you really want to do something like that. Or it's Bo Bichette that's being talked about. Both got DeJong's having a better year overall by the number wise than Bo Bichette, but I have no interest in Paul DeJong. His on-base percentage is consistently under 300, and I don't trust him. So I personally would prefer Bo Bichette, but where are you on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Paul DeJong doesn't necessarily fit the player profile that the Dodgers look for, right? He strikes out a ton, doesn't walk a lot, does have above average pop for a shortstop. I mean, this season, 14 home runs and 262 plate appearances. He's been an above average bat. This year at the plate, he's been a lot better than Bo Bichette. But I think Bo Bichette is your ultimate, let's get him right. He's still young. That player is still in there that hits over 300 and gets you between 25 and 30 home runs. Also, DeJong's a pure rental, kind of a Band-Aid player for the remainder of this season, whereas Bo Bichette, you get him for the rest of this season, and he's your starting shortstop next year. I think, too, if you would trade for a Bo Bichette, with the market like it is, the prospect cost would be high. I think the Dodgers would probably trade for him looking to get an extension done, and it's pretty much a known fact that Bichette isn't going to sign long-term with Toronto. So absolutely, if you had to pick between the two, I'd absolutely go with the Bo Bichette. And if you do that, You move Mookie back to second base because that's where he wanted to play in the first place, and you limit some of that wear and tear. You let him focus on what he does best, and that's be one of the best leadoff hitters in the history of the game. And then what do you do with Gavin Lux? So I think that's kind of where that calculus is right there. He doesn't really fit into this equation because he has no positional versatility, and also he just struggled at the plate offensively.
That was gonna be my question. I mean, assuming if we're making this move. Yeah, the gardener who decided to come and show up in my right in front of my house, right as I'm doing this. I would assume if you're talking about making a move for an infielder, then Gavin Lux ends up being the odd man out in that situation.
I mean, there's really nowhere to place him. I mean, you saw a couple years ago, they tried him in the outfield. Well, what happened? Cody Bellinger cracked his rib because they ran into each other, right? He ran into a wall, and he injured himself where it actually put the tape around the wall, the outline of Gavin Lux, okay?
So good.
It was an absolute disaster. I mean, worse experiment than those City Connects. But, I mean, for me, Gavin Lux is a player where he was a top prospect for so many years. And there's a little bit of the sunk cost fallacy with him that, okay, the organization knows that to sustain winning with Ohtani, you need to hit on some of these young players that are affordable, right? And Gavin Lux, if he was playing to the level that they expected him to, and that was supposed to be as your starting shortstop, he absolutely fit into this mix. But unfortunately, he doesn't fit into this mix as a second baseman that's a below average bat. Now, am I going to go check his Twitter after this to see if he still follows me after things I'm saying? Yes, I am. He probably will unfollow me. But, I mean, that's just kind of the cruel, harsh reality with this right now. I mean, you guys let me know. I mean, if Gavin Lux is, yes, he's been a very solid defender at second base, but we know, you guys know better than anyone, this organization covets positional versatility, and he can't play anywhere else but second base. That also happens to be the position that Mookie Betts should be playing this year.
Yeah, so for me, and I've said it many times on here, I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but to me, Gavin Lux has always been just a guy. He's a 4A player to me. I don't think he's ever been better on the Dodgers. He's never taken that and really grabbed hold of that of the position that he wanted to be playing, shortstop, second base, outfield, whatever it happens to be. He's never really come up and been like, this is mine, and he takes it over every chance, maybe because of the injuries or whatever, but he is a jag to me. He is a 4A dude. So I'm very willing for me to move on from him, move him somewhere else. And like you said, the positionality is not there, then you're really not that much of it just really doesn't help the team that much. So I don't know how you feel, Marcus. I think earlier you were waiting on Gavin, but I don't know where you are now.
Well, I mean, I think with Gavin, I think circumstances are just going to force his way out, right? If everything had gone according to plan, I think you're fine with Gavin Lux being who he is. But the injury to Mookie Betts, meaning you're forced to try to find another bat, maybe somebody who can play some shortstop for you, that automatically is going to push Gavin Lux out. And I think you're in the same situation with Lux. I think you're in you're in a similar situation with James Outman, where you got a lot of these young guys that you've been waiting on that are at the moment, Greg, 4A guys. But this is a team with immediate needs. If we're talking about keeping Teoscar Hernandez, if you're talking about going out and getting an Arozarena or a Luis Robert, that makes it tough for the Outmans, the Luxes of the world to find a foothold there. I mean, I'm fine, all things considered, right? He's coming from a year off of baseball. He's starting to square up the ball, get a little better. We know defensively he's fine over at second base. This team right now needs a little more than just fine, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I mean, I think with Gavin Lux, where he would fit perfectly would be a team like the White Sox, where they can play him at shortstop and just see if he can get through those throwing issues, because that's where he could really provide value as a shortstop. They could hopefully be close to an average bat. But yeah, I mean, right now, this team, that's the one thing about the Dodgers is I think sometimes they can be a little stubborn at times with kind of their moving off guys when they're loyal to a fault. And Lux, I think, is one of those guys that you look at the schedule and it's like, oh, he's struggling, it's only May. Oh, he's struggling, it's only June. Oh, he's struggling, it's only July. Then it becomes August and September, and like, okay, he had a bad season, he didn't fill that void when he had the opportunity to.
Yep, definitely. All right, so Parker, it's time to take it away. I know we got to get to Travis and Sliwa.
That's right. Yes. No, I just want to thank Doug for joining us. I wish we could talk some more Dodgers because we didn't even get a chance to get into June Tani. So stay tuned. We'll react to some
760 slug in June, baby. Highest for any player in any month ever.
Insane.
He's like 52 career June home runs or whatever it is. Yeah, it's out of control.
It's only going to go up. I remember this time last year, I was sitting there watching a 493-foot home run at Angel Stadium against the Diamondbacks. So let's see if we can get to 15 home runs.
I just hope we get Ohtani, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what we want.
We are waiting for Ohtani.
But he's never been there.
Yeah, that's right. He hasn't, but he will this year. So thank you again, Doug. I'll roll out the red carpet for you real quick before we head out and get to Travis and see what. Go ahead. Where can we find your stuff?
Oh, you can find me at youtube.com/DodgersNationTV. Also, you can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. But yeah, always a blast talking Dodger baseball. You guys are the best. Hope we'll be back soon after the trade deadline, before the trade deadline. But got to make some moves, man. The time is now. Go all in on the 2024 Dodgers.
Boom. Absolutely. You heard it there. Go all in. All right. This has been the Blue Review. Thank you to Marcus Grant for joining us on a Tuesday. That was amazing. Greg Bergman. I've been Parker Bell. And thank you to LAX. We will see you same time. Yes,
Real
Greg,
fast.
go ahead.
Thank you very much, DMac. But
they got to fly in LAX when Luis Robert Jr. lands and Randy Arozarena lands.
There it is. Marcus and I are going to be doing Mason and Ireland today. We are going to be the hosts of Mason and Ireland along with Andy Kamenetsky. So if you want some more of us, we're going to be talking some Dodgers, some Lakers. Not sick of us. Come listen to us on Mason and Ireland today, 1 to 4 today.
Tap in.
That's it.